Hello. Insert Christopher Moltisanti joke about something having a big nose. I'm not going to make it this time because I'm trying to behave myself on camera. So
since when?
Since we stopped recording the last video we recorded. We're going to talk about a dinosaur with a big nose today. And yeah, okay, never mind. I cannot do it. It could smoke a cigarette in the rain with its hands tied behind its back. Anyway, we're talking about Nasutoceratops today. Before we get into it, a couple of things. One, if you're a new viewer who's just found our channel, welcome. We've got a lot of videos for you to explore and catch up on. And if you like this video, we encourage you to subscribe to the Skeleton Crew and hit the little bell so that you get notified anytime we release a video. As always, everybody, please comment early, comment often, leave a like on the video. Tell us what you think about our own analysis and anything else you know about this animal. We would love to hear it. I also want to briefly let any new viewers know that I'm Dr. James Napoli. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences and North Carolina State University. And this is the third video we've recorded tonight. And my voice is fading, and I feel the Grim Reaper approaching me. I can see him on the other side of the computer monitor.
You should call IT about that. That doesn't sound normal. My name is Amelia Zietlow. I'm a PhD candidate at the American Museum of Natural History.
My name is Scott Johnston. I am the vertebrate paleontology fossil preparator and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology.
And my name is Dalton Meyer. I'm a PhD candidate at Yale University. And together, we're
the Skeleton Crew. Minus Alex.
Minus the plague.
Yeah,
boy.
minus Alex, the COVID boy.
he got EP because he has COVID, so we're letting him sleep.
Typhoid Rubenstahl.
Yes. Well, I hope he recovers from the COVID okay.
Yeah. Don't we all?
Anyway. What do I say? Dalton, let it into the world or something.
I'll do that. I was taking a drink, so I was off my...
James, you were fine a minute ago. What happened?
Just the amount of weariness. You know what it was, Scott? I'm sorry. It was as we were doing our little huddle before we recorded this, where we were trying to think of things to talk about, and my brain was just like... the window shut down. Sound effect happened to my brain. Of just eyes glazed over, and I was like, all I want to say is that it has a big nose, and that I want to rank.
Let's see it.
Oh, look at him go.
Wow, I like him. The colors are really nice.
I like this one on the right.
Oh my goodness.
I really like that one.
He has a big nose.
He does have a big nose.
You say that one more time, I swear to God.
It's the only thing James is going to say the whole video.
I like this one.
This is Nasutoceratops. You can tell it's a Nasutoceratops because of its big nose.
Because of how Nasutoceratops
hey, what does its name mean?
Yeah, no, it's the joke. That's what the name means. Nasutus means large-nosed, and ceratops is horn-faced. Jesus Christ, we got animals falling from the ceiling here. And the specific name is named for a paleontologist, Alan Titus.
Yeah. So Alan Titus is, he works for the National Park Service. May have retired. I don't believe he has.
I love this social animation so much.
It's really good.
Bites the horn. Alan Titus has been in charge of administrating the Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument, which has a tremendous diversity of fossil-bearing beds within it, including the Kaiparowits Formation, which this animal was found in. So that's why they named it after Alan Titus.
Very, very nice.
Yes. Speaking of the Kaiparowits Formation, I think I want to just say it's a cool place. The reason you don't hear about it a lot is that it is one of the more remote places on the North American continent. I don't remember what video we covered this in. We talked about this.
This was recent.
Yeah, it was.
I want to say Pachyrhinosaurus.
Either that or Albertosaurus, maybe? We might have been talking about Ceratophonius.
I think one of the two.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Or no, it was Majungasaurus. We were talking about the completeness of the fossil record. Right.
Yes. About
Majungasaurus,
fossil biases being related to how easy it is to get someplace. Yeah, where paleontologists are, because there was that one bar that has a lot of the trilobite localities around it.
Yeah. So the Kaiparowits Formation, just for anybody who hasn't seen that video, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it, is this really, really rich fossiliferous layer in the southwestern U.S. And the Kaiparowits Plateau is some of the most remote terrain that exists in the North American continent, especially in the lower 48 states. It was the last area of the lower 48 states to be geologically mapped because of how difficult it is to access. And so even though there's a tremendous diversity of fossil finds there, it's actually taken a while before people have really started working it. From what I understand, you often have to helicopter in and set up field camps by that because there's just no way to drive in or really hike in safely with all of your equipment. So it's a pretty difficult place to work. We're getting a lot of good stuff from there, though, and that is, these include Nasutoceratops, Utah ceratops, Cosmoceratops, another really cool ceratopsian.
That's a fun one. They're all centrosaurians. We don't have any. Are there Cosmosaurs from Kaiparowits?
Utah ceratops is a Cosmosaurian.
Utah-ceratops is a Cosmosaurian, yes.
Well, never mind. So 2 out of the 3.
2 out of 3 ain't bad, as Meatloaf would say.
Among
that one's for my dad and my dad alone.
Yeah. So among hadrosaurs, there's Griposaurus and Parasaurolophus cyratocrystatus, one of the 3 species. That's not the one that we have represented in this game.
It's the tiny crested one, the one that
it's the one
when it
with
was
the
cold.
short, droopy crest. Right. It was in the pool, Scott. And Parasaurolophus in general is quite rare in the fossil record. There are 8 skulls of cyratocrystatus from the Kaiparowits.
I'm surprised there were that many. Oh my god,
right.
That's a lot.
What I was going to say, listen, it is hard to prove any biogeographic signals in the fossil record, but I think that I understand why people make the argument that maybe Parasaurolophus was something that generally preferred lower latitudes. Because it does seem that within a relatively similar age slice, if you move south, you find way more Parasaurolophus and less of everything else than if you move north.
I'm sorry, can we go back to the laying down one for a real quick second? Because, oh my god, it sploots.
Oh, wow.
Oh my god.
Look at that sploot.
Wow.
That's tremendous, actually.
God.
Ooh, that is changing some thoughts I had about this.
Beautiful boy. Sorry, James. Yeah. Continue about Parasaurolophus.
Okay. No, I mean, listen, and I want to just be clear. You can't really test a lot of these biogeographic things in dinosaurs because you don't have enough of them. But I don't think the interpretation is unreasonable at all. It is true. There's one Parasaurolophus from Dinosaur Park, despite all of the fossils we found. And then with the comparative rarity of work in the Kaiparowits, we found 8 of them. Yeah. I can understand why people have interpreted it that way, but this is neither here nor there. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of theropods. There's a large canignatid that my postdoctoral supervisor named as a grad student. There's a troodontid that Lindsay also named. There's the Tyrannosaur teratophonius.
Good name.
Yeah. A lot of these are more recently named animals because exploration of the Kaiparowits only really started in the 80s. And it's primarily been done by people associated with the Utah Museum of Natural History and the Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
Yeah,
Nature and Science or Natural Science?
Nature and Science.
Nature and Science, that's what I thought.
Yeah, Nasutoceratops was only named in 2013. I remember this, very distinctly.
Yep. Yeah. And you know what was funny? You know who else made fun of its big nose?
Who?
The people who named.
Oh.
So this is a little bit from... I'm very happy the Wikipedia article jogged my memory on this, because I need to read this to you verbatim. In the UMNH press release accompanying the description of Nasutoceratops, the large nose of the dinosaur was emphasized, with Scott Sampson calling it a jumbo-sized schnoz. This was reflected by news outlets, with one article titled "Paleontologists Discover, Mock New Dinosaur Species."
That's great.
Discover, mock should be used more frequently.
Another
Let's all agree on that.
Humorous poems about the dinosaur by columnist Alexandra Petri, such as Piggledy Nasutoceratops, long-nosed horned just unearthed dino du jour, probably used its horns for showing dominance during its courtship, although we're not sure. This is brilliant.
Anyway,
They should have sent a different poet. That one just didn't quite hit for me.
Anyway,
sorry, Alexandra Petri.
Discover comma mock. She has a Wikipedia page.
She does indeed. She's from here.
More scientists
here being Harvard.
More scientists need to mock their study system.
Yes.
I think it's okay. Like, I think sometimes people seem to think that it means that we don't like these animals and we don't respect them. That's not true at all. It's the opposite.
Well, that's something that, like, it's in my experience, that is an almost like unifying characteristic of biologists, is either like loving disdain or mockery of your study system. That, like, James, I remember one time we were chatting over lunch back when we worked in the same institution and could do that.
It was a nice time.
It was a really good time. Where you were incredibly exasperated working on Psittacosaurus. And I believe you said something along the lines of, Scott, my goal in life is to work on every single dinosaur group until I hate them.
Boy, can I tell you something?
You're making progress.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's that one, like, Darwin quote.
Orchids.
On orchids?
Is it on orchids? Is it the? Well, say the quote.
I'm trying to look it up real quick.
I know he has the letter. I am feeling very poorly and very stupid and hate everyone and everything is because he's working on orchids and getting fed up with them. And I think in that same letter he complains about the orchids themselves.
So he does complain about those. The one I was thinking of specifically was on his work on barnacles. Because I know that those vexed him for a very long time. And fun fact as well, before I get onto the barnacles thing, is you guys might be tickled to know that Cyrus, the invertebrate fossil preparator at Harvard, or as I call him, the spineless version of me, got me for Christmas a framed poster of that Darwin quote that is now in my lab.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty big as well. It's great. But his quote on barnacles was, and this reinforces that this is a unifying characteristic of all biologists, I hate a barnacle as no man ever did before, not even a sailor on a slow-moving ship.
That's great.
That is.
Yeah. But I mean, the mockery can also be good-natured, right?
Yeah.
I remember one time, I won't name the paleontologist because
I'm sorry. I want to just go back for a second. That actually wasn't the full quote. I don't know why that source didn't include the immediately preceding thing, which was that quote is preceded by the phrase, I am wonderfully tired. And
that's great.
Okay, James, go on. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think so. I remember once I was an undergraduate, I was talking to a paleontologist. I won't name them. I don't know if they'd be proud of this joke, but we were talking about Coryphodon, a mammal that is apparently impossible to depict in a way that doesn't make it look horrible.
It is one of the worst looking animals that's ever existed on Earth.
So we were talking about Coryphodon. I'm sorry, but then we started talking about Barry Lambda, one of these like quote unquote pantodonts from like the early Paleocene or Eocene. And it's just like this big, stupid looking animal, Barry Lambda. And I remember he just looked at me and he said, yeah, but I'm sure Barry Lambda had a great personality. Which made me laugh a lot. Maybe more than I should be proud of. We had a fun time.
Oh, that's great.
Anyway, so yeah, this kind of mockery, I think, like Amelia says, is good. And it's nice. We don't all need to hype our animals up as the coolest thing that ever lived. Sometimes we can be like, look at how dumb it was.
Yeah. There is a mosasaur that I cannot wait to be published so that we can show off how spectacularly stupid it was.
I know you love to do that with like globidens and stuff.
But no. So globidens, when I call globidens, like I call it gross. So that's actually, people have
that's fair.
Picked up on this in these videos. Like when I don't when I describe a piece of anatomy as that is unique or weird, I often use words like gross and dumb and stop, and I don't like it. None of those things are true, really, usually. That's just a statement of that's really weird. And that's how I express it, because I think it's funny to call things gross. Because I don't have a good sense of humor.
Oh, you have a great sense of humor. What are you talking about?
I know, it was sarcasm. I know.
Well, that sure didn't land then.
I just too frequently jump to the defense of my friends. Don't you say that about my friend, even you, my friend.
It's just, I'm sorry, there's something so funny about Amelia being like, jokingly being like, I don't have a good sense of humor. And then all of us failing to laugh and Scott being like, no, you're funny, don't worry. That's really funny. Yeah, what about Nasutoceratops, though?
Well, I was going to say, while we're discussing it, which we kind of stopped discussing it, but I'm going to bring it back up briefly, the Kaiparowits Formation.
Oh, yes.
Just to discuss the paleo environment a little bit and to elaborate on some of the design choices for this reconstruction. It was, you're never going to believe it, folks, but there were big rivers.
Oh my God.
Maybe some slow moving water. Whoa. No, it's been likened to the Gulf Coast. So kind of similar to the Hell Creek in terms of like climate.
You're kidding.
Like a big swamp.
A depositional environment in North America that's like the Hell Creek.
You're never going to believe it. You heard it here first. It's likened to the Gulf Coast, and so I put it in I put us in the tropical map with some very big rivers because it's described as having like large rivers, lakes, some oxbow lakes and stuff. So all that's fine, fun, and dandy. And there are, I think, various degrees of kind of how vegetated it's thought to be, and I think that's kind of regional.
I was going to bring that up because I was thinking that this was possibly a little sparsely vegetated from some of the reconstructions I've seen.
Yes, and it is sparsely vegetated, and I'll elaborate on why I made that choice, which is mostly that because we're on the tropical map, in order to really get a good dense forest, you would have to use their regular forest, which is just not at all the kind of plants. It's the kind of plants that grow in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
It did say, however, that like there are like less abundant palms and a lot of ferns. So I've tried to include a lot of the ferns, which is handy because they eat the ferns. And then pretty much all the trees are palms because I was like, hey, at least they're there. But yes, if you're watching this and you're confused as to why this isn't like a very dense forest like those reconstructions, it was mostly a matter of, in order to make a compelling dense forest like that, they would either have to all be palm trees to be any kind of faithful, or use the wrong trees, or individually place huge dense forests of the correct trees, which I wasn't about to do. The other thing is there's apparently a bunch of cypress, which I don't think is available as something to place in the game.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually going to be very interesting, I think, to keep in mind if we ever cover another dinosaur park builder that has Nasutoceratops. Because there, I think we could build some very dense forests.
Yes.
If, Scott, hey, comment if you want us to play Prehistoric Kingdom.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I will also say that to save us from some actually folks, because I was just reminded of this, that technically speaking, there is another, like not in this game, but in the Jurassic World franchise, there is another Kaiparowits dinosaur that does make an appearance.
It's the dead Tyrannophonius,
It's
right?
the dead Tyrannophonius.
Oh my god. I forgot about that.
Yeah, me too.
Corpse.
They should put it into this game, and then when you breed it, it's just the dead corpse, and the like hatchery just shoots it out. No, it just shoots it like at 100 miles an hour, and it like ragdolls across the map, and then vanishes in a little blood spurt animation.
I could also see it being funny to add as like it's an Easter egg as it appears in the meat as the meat feeder. Everyone a 0.05 percentage point, like the secret reloads in Battlefield Hardline.
That would be fun. Tyrannophonius is cool. I'd much rather this video was about Tyrannophonius because I'd have something to say about it. But Tyrannophonius is a cool little guy. Not that big for a Tyrannosaur. Neato. It's a neat guy. We're going to know a lot more about it in the future as some new fossil materials described. I don't. There's pictures of some of the new material all over online. I'm not going to put them in the video because I feel like that's unpublished info I don't want to share.
Yeah.
But the stuff's on Wikipedia. It's a very poorly kept secret.
Well, what can we say about this particular critter then? Let's
go ahead.
Let's do our typical stem to stern. Go down this thing, and because I think I'll just come out and say it. I think that this is a very good Jurassic Parkified Nasutoceratops. Like, I have some qualms with it, but they are nothing more than qualms. And especially, like, we've seen how bad Jurassic World centrosaurians can be.
Don't invoke
We
them.
have.
And this is night and day. This is a lovely one. I remember when I saw it in the Battle at Big Rock. Did it premiere in Battle at Big Rock? Yeah. I remember when I first saw the design in that, and I was legitimately impressed.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. You may not notice this, and we haven't mentioned it yet, so I think it's worth bringing up. Its nose is very big. And
crazy.
The one thing, yeah, I know. The one thing I don't like about it is the weird, like, little armor thing on the nose.
Yeah.
I think it looks stupid. Sorry.
I don't hate it. I wish that it looked a little bit less segmented. If they had it like be like shown as a single plate, I would like it a little bit more. But if anything, I actually kind of like this one. It seems to be much more closely modeled after the female Nasutoceratops in the Battle at Big Rock short, and on the male, it has an almost like what I phrased it before as a pseudo horn on it, of like essentially just a little bit of an extra like ridge of keratin that kind of like projects backward just a touch, which like I will say I am not sure if I buy. If anything, I would probably advise against that if I was advising on a like scientifically rigorous reconstruction of this animal. But I mean, hey, what do I know? I haven't worked on this, but like I think it's neat, and I think it does a good job of highlighting the nose. Because kind of the two big things that Nasutoceratops is incredibly known for is the big nose and the bull horns. And I think they nailed both of those aspects, with the exception of the fact that the nose is way too wide. And yes, that could be attributed a bit to soft tissue. But if you look at like Nasutoceratops is incredibly extensively figured. It's like almost every element has multiple angles of every single piece, and artistic reconstructions as well, that are very, very nice. And Nasutoceratops's nose is pretty blade-like. It's only kind of bulbous in lateral view.
Yeah. I mean, it's a common thing with Jurassic Park, though, right? They make everything's head way too wide and blocky. Like dinosaurs are pretty narrow a lot of the time.
I've phrased this before as the T-Rexification of dinosaurs, that like, because T-Rex is abnormally wide and chunky in the head when it comes to theropods.
Yeah, but you know what? Not in the nose.
Not in the nose.
I mean, it's wide because it's big. It's not... Like, if you look at the Tufts Love T-Rex scan that's available on Sketchfab, which is this beautiful, beautiful specimen, one of the most perfectly preserved Rexes that's ever been found. Hey, everybody, we're back. If there's weirdness in the video, it's because our recording platform crashed, and it crashed in a cool way, though.
Yeah,
this was different.
Yeah, this was a different kind of crash.
This one was not our fault.
No, it wasn't.
No.
What I was going to say, also, my internet as a whole went down, and I'm actually wondering if it's because I'm hosting the thing. I wonder if my internet having a blip is what crashed it for everyone.
So it was your fault.
Might be. I'll take the blame. I'll throw myself on the grenade here.
Well, then you can't complain about it if it's your fault.
Sure, right. I actually went and fiddled with my router to disrupt the recording.
If that's a rule, I've been breaking that a lot.
So, I just wanted. We were in the middle of talking about the T-Rexification, as Scott calls it, of dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, and all I was saying is I don't think T-Rex itself is guilty of this. I think it's something in the artistry, because T-Rex itself is only really wide at the back. It's an enormous animal, but undistorted T-Rex skulls do kind of not show this like big table-like top of the skull.
No, I think Dalton and I were both reacting to the weird scream squawk thing that
was a horrible sound.
I've never heard it make that before. They normally make these little like gentle cow bellows. And that was
weird. Sorry, James.
No, it's okay. Anyway, like in Jurassic Park things, I feel like the animals are often depicted with this broad, flat surface of their skull, like they're doubling as an ottoman for the filmmaker. And
kind of crocky.
Kind of crocky, right? It is just like, it's like they look at it in lateral view and they're like, that must be 4 times wider than it really was. And they design it and they never look at it from another angle. That's what it feels like sometimes. I do agree that it's probably derived from the visual language of the Jurassic Park Rex. Although even the Velociraptors in the original movie are guilty of it. It's kind of true across the board.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if it's just a consequence of like, at the end of the day, right? Like, regardless of how many like paleo consultants they have and like who's doing concept art for it, like a lot of these artistic decisions and kind of the final say on the design is coming down to like people who are more into creature design and also people who aren't into design at all and who are just like having a say of like, hey, this is what it needs to look like for the project. And like our frame of reference, and I mean, I think even like paleo people are guilty of it because we don't look at stuff head on a lot. But like our frame of reference for animals is like mammals and stuff that's alive today. And there isn't much that's alive today that really has like narrow faces like dinosaurs did.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. Like I remember, and I know we brought it up in the Suchomimus video, that like seeing digital ducks like baryonyx reshoot of that scene where it's coming out and like fighting with them in the lava and stuff, which if you have not seen, you should go see that. It's rad. Was like the first time I've seen a baryonyx depicted in such a paleo rigorous way, and it is such an unsettling, unnatural, almost like alien creature. And just seeing a lot of these other dinosaurs where it's like, wow, we talked about in the Majungasaurus video about like Carnotaurus has an incredibly narrow head and it looks really goofy from the front. Like dinosaurs are a whole lot, especially in the snout area, they're a whole lot more like laterally compressed than we normally think of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even T-Rex, but if you look at like Allosaurs, right, they're really narrow. It's something that set like early Greg Paul art apart.
Yeah.
He would draw them like as they really kind of looked. And at the time, his art was like called transformative for how sleek and kind of like aerodynamic and like attractively built his dinosaurs were. And that's because he was not depicting them as these like big, overly broad monsters. He was looking at the fossils and saying like, this thing can't go together wide. Like it's a narrow animal.
I also remember being really struck by it in some of Louis V. Ray's art, because he has a tendency, one of the few paleo artists that like genuinely has a tendency to depict dinosaurs from weird angles, especially from the front. Yeah. Or at least like quartering on or something like that. And there's like, there's a specific drawing that he did of a Yangchuanosaurus that's like running at the screen. It's bright green and yellow, and it has these two ridges on its head going back that are so close together. And I just remember just going like, wow, this thing looks like it looks like diagonal cutters. Like it's a crazy looking reconstruction. Or like, oh, it's Triceratops that's charging from the front as well is also like a really, really iconic piece there.
Other than the nose being too wide and like the kind of like turtliness of the front of the
Chitinous
snout.
plates.
Well, yeah, and the chitinous plates. I feel like the skull is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It is. It's really good. And if anything, I wanna highlight a feature that I think is particularly well done on this reconstruction, and those are the horns. In that you might look at, I'm sure we've thrown up a couple pictures of the skull of Nasutoceratops while we've been talking now, and you might have noticed that the horns on this in-game model are considerably longer than what is depicted in, what is seen on the fossil. And it might sound a little weird for people who aren't super familiar with these animals. That is almost certainly like very correct. We know that ceratopsian horns were covered in keratin, same material as your fingernails and hair and stuff. And there has been some studies that show a lot of modern animals have horns that are built in a similar way to ceratopsians, in that they are bone cores with a keratin sheath over them. And a lot of them have absolutely gigantic keratin sheaths over these comparatively small bone cores. Like really good examples of this are like bighorn sheep and stuff. They can have these huge spiraling horns that just double back on themselves like multiple times. And if you were to have a skull of that and then like unsheath the bone core underneath, it's not that big. I don't even think it goes like halfway down the length of the whole thing. Like it's pretty small. And the brow horns on Nasutoceratops, even though it is mentioned that I believe that they are the largest in both relative size to the body and also absolute size, the largest brow horns seen on a centrosaurine, they still on the skull don't extend past the end of the nose, or at least the end of the nose that we have.
I mean,
wait, that would make it shorter. So,
right,
they doesn't extend into the. They don't extend past the end of the nose. So having horns on this life model that extend a considerable distance farther makes a ton of sense, because it would basically be that like that keratin sheath would stop a little bit short of the nose. The bone core would stop a little bit short of the nose, and then that would continue on. If anything, I think that this is a little bit conservative with the size of the brow horns on these guys. It brings to mind that one, that Giga Chad Triceratops in Prehistoric Planet Season 2 that has the absolutely enormous brow horns. Who's very, very well endowed, that gentleman. And that is not out of the realm of possibility, even in the slightest. And I think that that was done incredibly well with this game model.
I do think it is. Sorry, Amelia, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, aesthetically, I like the way that they do the longhorn thing with the shifting color towards the end.
Me too.
I really like.
Yeah, that's pretty. And I feel like it's incredibly plausible. Like, I mean, we have no idea what color these horns might have been. But, you know, that's something we see. I think we see it in other kinds of bovids as well. But, I mean, certainly in longhorns with that color gradient. And it looks great. It looks naturalistic.
There's a couple antelope that are like that.
Yeah. I do think that it is worth noting that the horn cores of bovids don't really mimic the shape of a horn inside. Like, a lot of the time, it's a relatively squared off structure. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what the core... Like, I don't think you're going to get something... I say this more for our viewers that, like, if we start seeing paleo art of ceratopsians with, like, horns that are, like, 5 or 6 times longer than the core, and the Skeleton Crew said to do this... Just say Scott said to do it. Don't let
just
me
say I said to do it. Well, this is also this leans into the bit where maybe in editing we can like double check this a little bit further to see if we can cut this. This is also a lot based off of Borealopelta because there is outlines of the keratin sheath of some of the osteoderms that is preserved, and it was shown that on Borealopelta, like it is that like the larger osteoderms that had a spike had significantly larger proportionality horn core keratin sheaths than the shorter ones.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not saying I mean we would need impressions of the keratin sheath of a ceratopsian horn to know.
Yes.
That. Right. And I'm not saying that it's not that much longer, but I think like if bovid horns are not a perfect example because the horn is basically just supported by a core that's like anchoring it, and then the whole thing is keratin. Versus this, where there is like a bony horn. Just all I'm saying is, if you draw a Nasutoceratops with a 20-foot long nasal or brow horn, just say it's because Scott said to. Don't say it's because I said to. Sorry,
continuing on the Scott said to do this thing, I want to, especially because I know that there isn't a huge amount to talk about with this animal, and it's our last ceratopsian.
Right.
I want to pose a question to the group here, a little thought experiment. I have always seen ceratopsians depicted as having these big, smooth horns. And I know that horns in extant animals, especially in antelope, can have a lot of different textures and stuff to them. Do you know of any osteological correlates or anything that would indicate the presence or absence of like the ridges on like the horns of like impala and stuff? Like, is that a plausible structure that a ceratopsian horn could have?
Amelia just sent a wonderful image that's relevant to 2 points we're making to our group chat. We'll put it on screen. So given that I seem to have been wrong about something, can I correct what I just said? Because I think I was wrong, and then Amelia, I'll let you take the ridges.
Sure.
Well, I mean, this is an antelope with a horn core that looks kind of like a ceratopsian horn core, where it's the whole horn, and the keratin sheath is like only a little bit long. I've definitely seen things where it's like almost like a nub with a lot on top of it. I'm now wondering if that's when the horn core has actually been cut off. And and I was just mistaken.
It just depends.
So maybe it just depends on the species.
Like, I'm gonna look. Like, I think you're right about sheep.
Let me check on bighorn.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Like bighorn sheep.
You're right about it in sheep. I think the problem is the thing I've just been kind of thinking about while you guys have been talking is I feel like we will never know until we find an outline, and even then, I think there's going to be variation depending on the group.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this about bighorn sheep as well. Is that I think it looks to me like the horn core of the bighorn sheep conforms a lot more with the female horn. And that the male horn that then develops the like big curly Q
is exaggerated.
It does seem to elaborate
that.
Away from the core a lot more than you see in the female horn, which is a troubling thing to think about with regards to ceratopsians.
I think that's a really interesting... Sorry.
I was saying exactly the same thing. That's not troubling. That's really cool, because it's like that would explain why, even though we have so many stupid ceratopsians, we don't really see sexual dimorphism, because it's in keratin, which, like, duh.
Yeah.
Like, not to be rude, but like, yeah, then to everybody and all the paleontologists, but like that makes sense. You know,
to bring it back to, I guess a question that was asked in our Q&A that we filmed earlier tonight is, I think that this is a really cool area of speculation. That having like again, kind of like a prehistoric planet thing, where like having males have incredibly elaborate horns. Like, imagine like if Yeah, I guess on Amelia's point, imagine, if you will, Styracosaurus, that's what the female looks like. And the males are even showier.
Yeah, I mean, very possible. I want to briefly just mention the sexual dimorphism thing again, because I think there's an important point here that's often lost. Sexual dimorphism is really hard to demonstrate statistically, even when it's obvious. And I just want to briefly use the example of it would take hundreds of human individuals to statistically demonstrate that human males tend to be taller than human females.
Yes.
Right. Just because the magnitude is not that big, it takes a lot of a sample. I mean, first of all, you need to know the sexes of the individuals. But like if you had a random sample of just human heights to just show that there's bimodality, you need hundreds and hundreds of individuals. And so with dinosaurs, like, I mean, the keratin's one thing, and like, I think it's totally reasonable that maybe like male ceratopsians had elaborated keratin that we don't, like, we're not going to see a bony signature of. It's also possible that males or females were bigger than the other sex, and that with only the handful of specimens we have for any of these, you're never going to find that. Right? You just might simply not have enough of them. You need a pretty large signal, or you need a large difference for the signal to be obvious.
Yeah. Returning briefly, because I think, Amelia, did you want to mention the ridges?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry about the ridges.
Yeah, I can. And like, here's the problem, is I have a specimen, so to speak, in my apartment that I could literally check this on, but I won't because I'm nervous to actually take the keratin off.
Yeah.
For those of you unaware, I have a hartebeest skull in my apartment because I like skulls, and sometimes there's a website that has sales that I buy skulls on because I'm an idiot. But one of the horn sheaths is a little loose, and I've sometimes been tempted to pull it off to see what it looks like underneath. Because hartebeest have really elaborately curved and ridged horns in some cases. This one, the ridges aren't super pronounced, but they've got the big, like Maleficent curve to them. And I really, really, really wonder what's going on in there. But I am afraid to take it off because as a piece of decor, I don't want to ruin it. I don't know how to fix it if I do. So I will not do that. But the image that I sent to our chat, I believe it's either a hartebeest or something similar. It's got that weird long face and the curvy cube.
I think it's a hartebeest.
Yeah, it's a different kind. It actually might be. There's like a smaller one. It starts with a T, I think. There's another antelope that's related that looks similar. But anywho, it doesn't matter. So the picture that I found has the skull. One side, the keratin is still on the horn. The other side, the keratin has been taken off the horn. And the horn itself is, like James mentioned, almost as long as the keratin, although I'll note that I think it's missing the complete back part. So in hartebeest, where it dips down, so you're missing a couple inches there. And it doesn't have any ridges, any other indication of the ornamentation that's on the keratin, which on this individual, the ridges extend the entire length of the horn. And then on the other end of things, like even some of the horn cores that appear to have like ridges or decoration to them, like the sheep, or even like sorry, we've got wild hour happening. If you've seen, there's a couple pictures of bison horns with the cores, with the sheaths removed, and there will be these striations that kind of run up along the horn, and the keratin itself, like it doesn't look like that. It doesn't match that. So like even when there is a texture to it, it doesn't match. Not being a person who works on these animals, although I do, if it hasn't become maybe a little obvious, I like them very much. I really like antelope and bovids. I think they're very cool. It's part of the reason I really like ceratopsians, and this one in particular. Anyway, I really don't know. If I had the foresight, I could have asked one of the two people we have at the museum right now who's working on the evolution of horns and antlers in bovids. At the AMNH, we have Zach Calamari, who's a research assistant, I think, or whatever.
Research associate, yeah.
Research associate, so former student at the museum, and Chris Fink, who's a current student at CUNY, who shares No, he doesn't. He does not share my office, but Zach does. But anyways, the point is, they're the reason that we have in the new expansion to the AMNH, the Gilder Center, there's a wall of horned beasts. And that's why, because Zach Calamari's research has been the evolution of horns and antlers in bovids and antelope and stuff. And it's something that I think is super cool. And I wonder if it isn't something that has an obvious answer that just like no one has thought to ask someone like Zach. Like, hey, are there any correlates? It could just be no. Is there a fixed percentage of keratin to bone length? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. Zach probably knows. But yeah.
One thing I also want to note, for like not to fuel crazy speculation with James said to do it, but
yeah,
pronghorn horn cores are not.
I was about to say that.
Right.
Yeah, I've got one of those too.
Right. And so that's a little. I mean, listen.
I know,
I'm sure that reptiles are playing by different rules here, but it would be.
Which Dalton also put an example of that in the chat. That the Jackson's chameleon.
Which it appears that their horns are not as like severely textured as some of the antelopes we've been looking at and talking about, but they do kind of have a ridgy appearance to them, and it looks like the horn core of the chameleon is a smooth cone. And
before anybody says it, yeah, we all know that pronghorns are doing their own weird thing, and they grow and shed those keratin sheaths every year because they're stupid, awful monster animals. And I love antilocaprids so much; they're one of my favorite groups of mammals. They're just so cool.
If antilocaprids are so good, why aren't there 2 antilocaprids?
Yeah, why is no one named pronghorn too? Oh wait,
they all went extinct.
There's that one that I'm forgetting the name of it off the top of my head. Editor, throw it up on screen when I look it up and send it to you. That we have a fossil of, or I guess the AMNH has a fossil of on display. That it's asymmetrical and it looks like a deer. Like it's incredible. Yeah. Like one antler is both horns, I guess, are incredibly branched, and they look just like mule deer antlers.
I thought they're antlers.
They're not.
Are they
no,
horns?
That's an antilocaprid.
No.
And yeah.
Oh,
and one of them is incredibly larger than the other one, and that is a uniform characteristic. I thought that it was just like, oh, we found a weird one. It was just a non-typical.
And isn't it random which one's bigger?
If memory serves, yes. They're so weird. But so okay,
it's amazing.
And the last thing I'll say on this, and I've been frantically trying to learn about this one. And not seeing any really good pictures of this, and I'm going to have to ask some of my more like modern biology friends. Is eland. That eland, they have horns that spiral, and not in like the big corkscrew like kudu way, but like just kind of in a very tight. It looks like it's almost just the keratin that's spiraling on it, and they're super super cool. And I wonder if could ceratopsians have done this? I have no idea. It's really neat, and yeah, this has all been a big digression.
I don't see why not.
I think there is so much we don't know in the fossil record. I see no reason that we couldn't have bizarre like keratin structures on ceratopsian horns.
Yeah.
It could be anything as far as I'm concerned, unless we know about the developmental regulation of reptiles. But I feel like we don't.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, because chameleons are the only things that get anywhere close. Right?
You heard it here from the Skeleton Crew. Reptiles are not horny enough.
Well, anyway,
do we have any other last points that we want to make about Nasutoceratops before we go rank it?
We should probably do phylogeny.
Oh,
because we've been saying that it's a centrosaur for a while. But what is it? What does that mean?
Well, I'm gonna steal Alex here. The COVID it's not actually sick. He's not sick. He doesn't have COVID. I've consumed part of his soul, and he feels unwell because he doesn't have all of himself. So it's a centrosaurine. That's what it is. That's the whole thing. It is, so if you think most of the stuff that we've looked at have been chasmosaurians, right? Because there's Triceratops, there's Chasmosaurus, there's Torosaurus. And but then I guess we've had a few centrosaurians as well. We've had Styracosaurus, we've had Pachyrhinosaurus, we've had Sinoceratops infamously. So I guess it's half and half. Right? Did you just make a sign of the cross?
I did.
So this is another centrosaurian, and these are generally characterized by, at more advanced stages, not having giant brow horns, right? Generally being characterized by like smaller brow horns, if any, with a big nasal horn is the kind of normal centrosaurian arrangement as you typically think of it.
I normally joke with people that you can tell a chasmosaurian because it has 3 horns, 2 brow horns, and a nose horn. You can tell a centrosaurian by the fact that it'll have brow horns or a nose horn. Generally not both, but sometimes both.
Right.
Like Avaceratops.
And a lot of horns on the frill often. Right. So it's an interesting animal. Centrosaurians also always have big fenestrae in their frills. I'm not aware of any that close the fenestra. But then again, most chasmosaurs also have big fenestrae. Triceratops is really the exception there.
Weirdly, Avaceratops is another one that doesn't have any fenestrae in it. And as far as I know, it's like one of the only other ceratopsians. And it's weird that it's not closely related to Triceratops. It's more closely related to actually this guy right here. It's very closely related to Nasuto.
Right? Yep.
Yeah. And actually, it does seem, I guess I've just noticed this from looking at some more recent reconstructions of it. It does seem that the reconstruction with a nasal horn is more based on Triceratops, and more recent reconstructions give it a kind of Nasutoceratops like big ol' schnoz.
That's interesting. I think the interesting thing about the systematic placement of Nasutoceratops is that it's not just a centrosaurian, it's a fairly basal centrosaurian.
Yeah.
Right. It's fairly early diverging. According to the phylogeny presented in the paper, the only more basal one is Diabloceratops, which is a very cool specimen.
It's such a cool animal. And it's so pretty.
And what's interesting is that Avaceratops, Diabloceratops, Nasutoceratops, and the next most basal one, Albertosaurus, Albertoceratops, not Albertosaurus. It is 12:30 p.m. or a.m. We have been recording for 4.5 hours. Albertoceratops all have big brow horns. So I would say that that's an indication that the plesiomorphic state for these animals is having large brow horns, which is confirmed by Zuniceratops, which is more basal than the split between centrosaurians and chasmosaurians, also having big brow horns. So so that's pretty cool that this is a fairly basal member of the group.
That is. Since I'll just add on briefly that since the Nasutoceratops paper, further work and new species have found, I think Diabloceratops is the sister taxon is possibly Pachyrhinosaurus. Which wouldn't surprise me, and it does a similar thing of having big brow horns. Yeah,
and so that's about it for phylogenum. Centrosaurians are basically like a North American radiation in the way that, like, honestly, large-bodied ceratopsians are kind of a North American thing. There's not a lot of evidence of them elsewhere, like aside from Sinoceratops.
Yeah,
it's cool. I do think, as we better sample a lot of the fossil record of like the late Cretaceous, I think we will come to understand ceratopsians in general and a ceratopsian dominated fauna as a weird endemic thing and not at all the rule for what ecosystems looked like at the time. On the flip side, I would have guessed the same thing about hadrosaurs a couple of years ago, but we've actually discovered quite a lot of evidence that hadrosaurs were everywhere. Like cosmopolitan all over the place.
Yeah.
Even in Gondwana by the end of the Cretaceous. Like they were going everywhere. But ceratopsians, like, it's really a Western North American story, aside from Sinoceratops, which probably came from there originally. So
neat.
It's interesting. It's cool.
Well, why don't we emigrate on over to the species viewer and rank this big nose boy?
Certainly. Start saving the game. Dun, 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 going to the viewer. Dun, 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 dun. I wanna rank a dinosaur. Nasutoceratops.
Dalton, you know we're keeping this, right?
Yeah.
This is Dalton really not beating the is an active member of a choir allegations. Fun fact while you're grabbing this, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but when I got my when I was offered the position at the AMNH, we had a big going away party for me and like had a cake and everything, and like instead of singing happy birthday we sang New York, New York. And it was actually a blast.
The first time that, not the first time I visited New York, but the first time that my friends from Colorado came out to visit me and we went to New York, we were staying in the Bronx and we got there late at night, and then we took a subway in the morning into Manhattan, and we got out at 42nd Street. And we, I don't remember which one of us did it, but I think one of us like kicked the doors open out of the station. And when we walked out, it started going, bam, bam, bam.
All right, Amelia, what do you think?
All right. I like it a lot, but I'm biased. As I've said several times now, this is probably my favorite ceratopsian. I like it a lot. I don't know why, but probably because it looks like a bovid. I don't know. Like, I agree that the stupid nose plates don't need to be there, but I'm not normally zoomed in on its face, so I don't care. Other than that, it looks great. They did a good job with the horns. The rest of the body looks like a normal animal. The colors are cool. It's very good. I'll give it an S. I actually think that the little short thing, the Jurassic World short with this thing in, is like was my first exposure to the animal at all. It was just like, that's the coolest dinosaur I've seen in a hot minute. So yeah, no, it's S. It's perfect. I like it.
I have forgotten to mention that I work with the man who named this animal. Eric Lund was doing his master's degree. This was his master's thesis at the University of Utah. He is currently managing the new Dino Lab here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. So I see him every day. And I completely forgot to mention, A, that we're doing this video to him, and B, him in this video until now. So I'm rectifying at least the latter of those by mentioning that I work with him.
You should send this to him when it comes out.
I'm not going to, because of what I'm going to rank the dinosaur.
Well, I'll send it to him.
Please
I know
don't.
him too.
Please don't. Anyway, so this dinosaur, I like the real Nasutoceratops. This is unfortunately plagued by too much Jurassic World-ism to me for me to rank it as highly as I would like to. Like, the version of this animal is depicted in Prehistoric Kingdom. Flawless. Love it. Beautiful.
Oh my god,
gorgeous.
It's so pretty.
I forgot it was in the game, to be honest.
It's like the snout is elongated. It's got this weird turtle beak. It's got the armor plates. It's too thick. The frill and horn area I do like. The forearms or the forelimbs rather are messed up in the way all ceratopsians are. The tail is probably too long, given what we know about the ceratopsid body plan. I don't hate it, but I really don't feel much love for it either. I feel like it's bad in the same way that a lot of things designed for like Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom are not great. And I'm going to give it a B.
I see what you were saying, James, and I still think that this is a very, like, there are obvious, like, I think this is a very good kind of Jurassic World-ified, I will say, Nasutoceratops. There are a lot of things about it that I wish that they would do better. Yeah, too wide. Yeah, and I think that, again, we only have this thing from upper arms up, basically, and only like half the skull anyways, but it's a gorgeously preserved half of that skull. We didn't even mention, we have skin impressions of this, and they don't really look like...
No.
Oh, there's not even scales on this. Neat. Cool. Oh, it's
Smooth.
Skin. Flesh man.
He's got these weird scales in the frill.
I really don't like those. They almost look like a modeling error. Oh, God. But that's another thing that I absolutely love about the Prehistoric Kingdom one is if you zoom in on it, like the coloration on the patterns on the frills are individually done with the different mosaic scales and stuff, and it's so pretty. Oh man, the more I think about that one, the lower I want to rank this. But like its body is a little bit too long. It again, like Jurassic World kind of doesn't get how ceratopsians are built, which like I understand they're weird, but like I don't want to give it a B because I'll give it an A. It feels like A feels like the right place for it because like I think B is where the Triceratops is, and I definitely like this more than the Triceratops.
Okay. I'm picking up from the ether from 30 feet away from me. Hang on. I'm penetrating the cloud of disease.
Hopefully you're wearing protection.
Alex gives it an A and does not elaborate on why. I'll elaborate on why I'm going to give it the grade I'm going to give it. I like it. I like it. I think, they got the skull they did a very good job with the skull. It is a bit wide, but I don't tend to look at them from the head on, so it doesn't bother me as much. The chitin plates really annoy me. It feels like they had like a really good... the dinosaur's been greebled a little bit.
That's fair.
And you don't need to greeble your dinosaurs. They're not Star Wars ships. They're living animals. And it feels like they had probably like a great, like there may have been a point in the development of this design where that wasn't there, and they're like, oh, it just needs one more thing. And it's like, when you're at the point in the design where like, oh, and maybe just one more thing, that's often a good point to be like, no, it's done. We're not going to add one more thing. We nailed it. But yeah, it annoys me. It's not horrible. It's not the end of the world. I do enjoy that they put the little midline parietal kind of hornlets that we think this probably had. I think they did too many of them, but who cares? More so, the body suffers a little bit, as has already been discussed, of not being very ceratopsian-like, and also it's not nearly as bad as the Forbidden one, but it does encroach on the kind of like bizarrely bison-esque, like really tall shoulders. It's really only when it's only for part of the step cycle, so it's not as bad as in Sinoceratops, where like the shoulders get raised above the hips. It just bothers me enough to where I don't want to give this an S, just because I see it and I'm like, oh great, and then I notice a few things. I'm like, oh, so I'm going to give it an A.
And with that, Nasutoceratops gets put in A tier. Nice. Hooray! And now, whoa, everybody, it is time.
Thank God.
Oh, is it time?
It's time to spin the wheel.
To spin
the wheel.
That wheel. That freshly ceratopsian-less wheel.
Oh man, it is.
Oh.
Been a while since we had one of these.
Yeah.
Oh boy, a stegosaur.
Okay.
Hey, it's like the other cool stegosaur.
It's cool. We'll have something to say about it, I'm sure.
Hooray, Centrosaurus.
All right, so next week...
2 models.
Oh, yeah!
All right, 2 models. One of them's bad. But
guess which?
Yeah.
One of them's huge.
All right. So, everybody, thank you again for watching. We'll see you next week when we talk about Centrosaurus. For the 3rd time tonight, I would like to thank our patrons, for all of your support of the Skeleton Crew. I'm mustering what energy I have left in my body so that I can thank you with the proper degree of effusiveness, because we really could not do this without the generous support of our patrons. This is my perpetual exhortation that if you do enjoy our videos and you don't support us on Patreon, please consider it if you can. Every little bit of support we get there helps us take the time we need to make these videos, keep them coming out regularly every week, and make them the best that they can be. It is not an easy effort for us, given all of our schedules as professional paleontologists. We are not full-time content creators, and I think if we were to try to become full-time content creators, we'd lose a little bit of what makes this channel special. And
Quite
so
a bit.
we appreciate all the support we can get to help us kind of keep our two jobs going at the same time. Our most generous patrons who support us at our Gorgosaurus tier and higher are Benjamin Seepser, nickname 3110, Philip Fico, AK92, Christopher Bellis Jones, Adamolos, Dan O'Kyrus, King Zashu, Lax Fishin, Max Ironpaw, original username, Pythonic, and Wheat. That's as of recording this episode. The names of the rest of our patrons will be scrolling on screen right now. I want to thank all of them for their contributions and for what they do for the channel. We really could not do this without you guys. If you're watching this video, please remember to leave a like and a comment on the video. Tell us if you agree with our ranking of Nasutoceratops. I would like more people to tell me that they agree with my ranking of Nasutoceratops because I was outvoted here. And I want to feel vindicated in the court of public opinion.
Get in the
Thank
comments.
you all so much. We really appreciate you watching, continuing to watch every week. So thank you, and we will see you next week when we talk about a small stegosaur or a gigantic stegosaur, depending on what piece of media you're consuming, from the Jurassic of Africa.
But regardless of which piece of media, a very spiky boy.
Very spiky.
Oh, yes.
A prickly lad, as they say. I think I just fell
Like a
asleep
cactus.
while I was speaking. Yes. Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
See you, everybody.